Okay, so let's get into the conversation. Today is June 12th, and like we've seen this morning, 30 years since the annulment of the 1993 elections. And of course, we remember also that before now, Democracy Day was celebrated on May 29. But during the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari, he decided Nigerians actually were the ones that pushed. Let us see how we begin to celebrate the real Democracy Day on June 12th. And that has happened. This morning, we had the speech of the president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So I would like us to start the conversation this morning by looking at his speech. He said a lot of things, eulogizing on MKO Abiola. But what's your take on that particular speech this morning?
So I should start by saying that it's no surprise that he would want to cast himself in a certain light to make a certain association because I think part of what established his political brand at all in the first place was this idea that as a member of Nadeco, which he was in the 90s, that he was instrumental in the fight against military dictatorship and the return of democracy in 1999 was at least in part due to his efforts alongside those of Nadeco. That's certainly the narrative that he would want to put across. So, and it follows logically from that he would also want to be associated with the legacy of MQ Abiola for a number of reasons, not all of which are benign political reasons. Some of them I find to be quite questionable reasons. So, to my mind, based on my individual reading of what his political motivations are, the specific attempt to associate himself with MK Abiola is done for a variety of reasons, but the reason which I perhaps find a bit questionable is that it, in my opinion, is an attempt to cast himself as some sort of assumed descendant or assumed political descendant of MK Abiola as the supposed de facto leader of the the Yoruba ethnic group or the southwestern political interest group, which I find to be very mischievous because this assumed consensus, which has been a big thing he has been trying to push since 1999, that he's the consensus leader of the southwestern political caucus, and there was no meeting where this was decided. There was no consensus where it was decided that this person represents the political progeny of Obafemi Awolowo or MK Abiola. There was no meeting where these things were decided, but he's been very clever at positioning himself in certain ways. So I'm not surprised that it's more of the same, and he's going to keep on doing this. It's a very faint dog whistle, but it's a dog whistle nonetheless, and the people to whom it's directed at understand what he's trying to say when he's saying it. It's also no coincidence that it's in the middle of a very contentious electoral tribunal process that he's invoking the memory of MK Abiola because part of what his post-election political strategy has been to infer that if in any way the results or the supposed results of the February 25 election are contested or challenged or overturned in any way, that somehow that would represent a reprisal of the annulment of the June 12 election, that somehow that would be something unfair. So I'm not surprised that he's positioning himself in this way. But moving away from that, what I will say though is those who love to invoke the memory of the June 12 struggle and who love to invoke the memory of the fight against Sani Abacha in the 1990s and the Nadeko struggle. I think those people, the people who were actually involved in the struggle, haven't done a good enough job of coming out to state facts, and a lot of them have remained in the background and have allowed people who were nominally involved in the struggle, but at the same time, some of them were working at cross purposes with it. Some of them were doing it for all sorts of personal reasons. They've allowed those people to come out and sort of take credit and build political platforms out of those things, even if their claims are not necessarily true. So Tinubu, for example, who now has assumed this de facto title of the champion of Nadeko, which he wasn't, and a titan of the June 12 struggle, which also he wasn't. It's very unfortunate that the people who were actually around, who were actually in those rooms at that time, for whatever reason, have chosen to remain silent. I've spoken to a number of them, and they freely admit to me off the record that things took place in a very different manner to how they're portrayed publicly. But for reasons best known to them, they will never come out and
True.
openly state these things, which is why history gets to be written by people like Tinubu in Nigeria. History gets to be distorted, but based on at least publicly accessible historical accounts, which can be verified, which I can back up, it's fair to say that um, President Bola Tinubu coming out this morning and speaking about democracy as though he himself was instrumental in the struggle for the return of democracy. Meanwhile, this was someone who was negotiating with Abacha through the back door during the so-called Nadeko struggle, which was supposedly part of. This was someone that when Ken Saro-Wiwa was being executed by the Abacha regime, in cahoots with Shell Oil. He owned a Shell Oil filling station in Washington D.C. And in fact, Nigerians in Washington D.C. actually held a demonstration at his Shell Oil, holding placards denouncing him in 1996. All of these things are falling into a memory hole now. So he's able to present himself as a hero that he categorically was not. So it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's as far as Nigerian politics go, it's more of the same until those who know better or those who were there come out and state what happened and allow history to be written correctly. We're going to be seeing more of
But